Boker Tov, everybody. Sorry, Tovim, whatever, anybody, depending on your time zone. Okay, we'll finish up, please God, the bracha of Goel Yisrael, and then we'll move on to Rifa'enu. Thank for healing. So we were discussing last week that the bracha of redemption, it's a little bit sort of unusual because all the commentaries say it's not really talking about the redemption of the Jewish people on a national level, although it clearly has hints to that, and clearly they are related. But this is the section of the Shemona Esrei that's talking on a personal level. So we're asking God to heal our personal afflictions, not so much the afflictions of the Jewish people. We ended off last week, I think, saying Inui from we know from Yom Kippur. They're the Chamesh Inuyim, the five. Well, I don't know how do we translate that in English? The five things of affliction, right? Tanuet nafshotechem. You have to afflict your soul. So that no eating, no drinking, no shoes, etc. But we also saw that in the Haggadah, only has this particular the separation of men and women, the non going on family life. And I just thought it was a cute, beautiful interpretation of the Torah Tamima, that it says, how do we know that? They quote the pasuk that God saw and He knew. Vayeda. We know the word vayeda in biblical connotation, in biblical meaning, has sort of a sexual connotation. V'adam yada et Chava. Adam was intimate with Chava. But since the Torah Tamima explains, because it doesn't say what God saw. In other words, God normally when it says God saw, it says what He saw, but it doesn't say. So it's meant to be something that is in the private realm. I thought that was just a very fascinating explanation. But okay, so Banyenu, God should see our personal suffering. That's really what it's referring to. Riva Rivenu, He should fight our battles. Riva Rivenu. So here the commentaries explain, again, there's just a lot of literary and poetic license again, Riva Rivenu, the double language, which we'll see in the next bracha. Talks about the fact that our enemies have made us suffer, let's say, more than we did deserve. God should help us, and our enemies, again, probably here it's more referring on a personal level. But of course, the personal and the national are always intertwined in Judaism. You most see that actually often when I speak at a Shiva house. You always say, Hamakom Yenachem Etchem Etokshar Avei Tzion Yerushalayim. We comfort the mourner together with all mourners for Zion and Jerusalem. We always link the personal and the national. And that's, of course, why all our brachot are always done in plural, even though we may be praying for us, personally, we always are concerned with the nation and so on. So this bracha really, I think, does have this double meaning. And some of the commentaries actually do refer to it more as a bracha of redemption of the Jewish people. And Galena Meira Leman Shemecha. So Meira means quickly, the Lubavitch, I don't know, their slogan, we want Mashiach now. So I don't think that's exactly what this means, but Galena Meira should come quickly. So that actually is an interesting, again, on the national level, it's a very interesting debate. Will the Geula come? Will the Geula come quickly? Redemption come quickly or slowly? We've mentioned many, many times we're not supposed to waste any time on this. The Rambam says, don't waste your time on this, so we won't. But that's it doesn't lead to Ahavat Hashem or Yirat Hashem, calculating when, how the Mashiach is going to come is basically a waste of time. This is what the Rambam writes in the last chapter in the Mishnah Torah. It's not going to lead you to love of God and to fear of God. That's actually this week's parsha. Right. So what do you have in this week's parsha? If I remember the pasuk correctly, right? We asked, what does God want from us? Right. That's this week's parsha. No. Let me just find it. Something to that effect. Just let me find it right here. It's in chapter 10 in Akev. The only thing God asks for us is that we are in awe of Him and we fear Him and we love Him. So that's what the Rambam seems to be picking up on that to calculate when the Mashiach, when the Gula is going to come, that doesn't lead to Yirat Hashem and it doesn't lead to Avad Hashem. That's our goal. So don't waste your time. But anyway, but there is nonetheless that there is some discussion. So it depends, maybe if we're worthy or not. But there's some ideas that like it's clarifying, that redemption comes in the blink of an eye, like out of nowhere. I guess we like that idea because it means you go from negative to positive very quickly, unexpectedly. Sometimes, where it's hard to believe. That's I think a more optimistic version, I guess, sometimes. And then, of course, you have the idea that it's a slow, long process. And in a sense, both are true, right? And then perhaps that's what we're witnessing now, but who knows? But anyways, but here, when we're talking on personal suffering, so that we don't have the whole nation going, how long did you take? We ask God to do things quickly. That's going to be in the Haftorah, Ni Hashem B'Tach Achishana, that same idea, right? That the redemption will come in its time quickly, which of course is a contradiction, because if it's coming in its time, it's not coming like quickly, and if it's quickly, it's not in its time. So the rabbis interpret, if we're worthy, it will come quickly. If we're not worthy, it will take a lot of time. The truth of the matter, that I don't think the Rambam accepts that. If I have to check into it a little bit more, but we've often discussed the view. Rav Soloveitchik discusses this in Al Tshuva, that the Rambam rules in the Mishnah Torah. He actually writes this in his legal code, that the Mashiach will only come when the Jewish people repent. So that's very nice, but how do we know we're going to repent? There's no guarantee we're going to repent. We've been waiting a long time. We still have Sinat Chinam. Like the Beit HaMikdash hasn't been rebuilt for 2,000 years, right? Rabbi Akiva thought it would be rebuilt 60 years later. What do you think is going on in the Bar Kochva revolt? Well, why do you think he's supporting it? The first temple to the second took 70 years, so whatever. Believe me, no Jew alive in the year 70 thought that 2,000 years later there wouldn't be a temple. I can guarantee you that no rabbi thought that, and every single person thought in 50 years, 70 years, 100 years, there would be a temple rebuilt. So how do you know? Maybe the Jewish people will never do tshuva, so the Mashiach will never come. So Rabbi Soloveitchik says, you're sort of right. That's a little bit true, except it's true the Mashiach won't come until we do tshuva. But he says belief in the Mashiach means belief in that the Jewish people will do tshuva. So the Rav Soloveitchik sort of says what the Rambam means is that you want to call it a 14th principle of faith, that there's a principle of faith that one day the Jewish people will finally learn all the things that we haven't picked up through our historical experiences, and we'll learn how to get along with one another. That's presumably that's the number one issue we have to learn, because that seems to be the idea the rabbis dwell on the most in terms of why the exile is happening. Anyway, but so there not necessarily is a time. According to the Rambam, there is no time. There's no fixed time, but whatever the case may be. Anyways, that's just the national redemption. It's like I say, not something we should spend too much time on. So that's it. On the personal thing, Leman Shemecha, this is an idea that comes up a lot. We've discussed that we ask God to help us to help him. God doesn't look good when the Jewish people suffer. We are the representatives of God in this world, and the truth matter, all religions are the representative of God in this world. When Muslim terrorists blow up the World Trade Center, do all kinds of or hijack airplane, all kinds of things that terrorists do, it in the name of God. It doesn't matter what God they're doing in the name of. It's bad for our religion. If you're just a typical, all those religions, they just fight, they kill each other. More people have been killed for religion, wars for the name of God. So it's, in that sense, our religions are linked with each other, and that Achilul Hashem can be caused by a non-Jew too. In other words, it's not something necessarily we can control, but it is something we should be very well aware of. And in other words, it's very nice when Jews work with other religious people. And then Rav Soloveitchik, his and how many people have read Confrontation? Has anybody read Confrontation? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yochevet's read it. So Yochevet's going to give us a summary of Confrontation in 30 seconds. No, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to be on the spot,
okay. Yeah, I was muted. Okay, so the first part, he talks about how a Jew is doubly confronted. And that's what sets us apart from the non-Jews. We have our duty to the world, but we also have our covenantal obligations, our duty to God. And that is so unique that we cannot have a theological dialogue with the other nations. We could work together on to better the world. With that first confrontation, we're all obligated together, but with the second one, we each have our unique path to God, and any conversation will not work.
Correct. That's a famous piece the Rav delivered after Second Vatican Council. I think it was published in '65. I don't know exactly. It was published in Tradition, I think, originally, where there was a lot of movement since the Catholic Church was sort of changing in a very positive way its attitude towards Jews. Jews should reach out, and we should be engaged in theological discussion with the Catholic Church. And the Rav Soloveitchik said we can work, and not we can, we should, we must work with them for, I don't know, nuclear disarmament, war, peace, and all social justice. That's all very beautiful. But our theologies are so different. It's what's the point? It will just create ill will. And we have different axiomatic, principles, and we're coming from totally different places. So therefore, we should not engage in any theological discussion. I want to get into this now, but there's been, that was 1965. Maybe 2024 is a little bit different. And the truth of the matter is, people who know, the Israeli rabbis were much more open to this. Rav Shar Yishuv Cohen, I think, but other people, there was a more openness, interesting, among some of the Israeli rabbis to discuss. And it's come up again, whatever, how we should do. But that's not the point. But all religions are intertwined. We are all connected. By the way, just to point out, Rav Soloveitchik says this idea that we should work and must work together with other religions, either religion that and I'm assuming the Rav, I don't know this for a fact, but I imagine that Rav Soloveitchik considered Catholicism to be idolatry. That's the traditional view, that, Catholicism is idolatry. Nonetheless, we should still work with them. We have much in common. Our religions, people, searching for God, but not theologically. So the Rav really held that same view vis-a-vis non-Orthodox Jews. The Rav is sort of famous for not signing the proclamation in 1954, I guess it was, with the Synagogue Council of America, when 11 famous Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rav Ruderman, Rav Gifter, I mean, all the major leaguers and the Rosh Yeshivas all signed this prohibition that to have interfaith dialogue. Well, they took it more than that, but cooperation between Orthodox and Reform leaders. We're not allowed to recognize Reform rabbis, conservative rabbis. That decision still is a major sticking point between, I would say, the modern world, the modern Orthodox world, and the Haredi world. It's still a major point. And Rav Soloveitchik refused to sign that. And Rav Soloveitchik felt we should be in Synagogue Council of America, Orthodox, conservative, and Reform rabbis, and we should work together. And the Rav, famous, Hitler didn't distinguish between the Hasidic Jew and the atheist and anybody. And the Rav was into that idea a lot, and we have much to work together in Israel and all kinds of other things. But the Rav did not extend that to theological discussion either. He felt that Orthodox Reform, we have totally different, I don't want to say we're other religion, we're one people, but one believes that the Torah is divine, one believes it's not divine. It's a totally different, once you believe the Torah is man-made and you can change it, there really is nothing. We don't share a common language when it comes to the idea of Torah. Okay, how we apply that in modern times, I don't know, but exactly. But I'm throwing that out there, that the Rav's view is, I think, very similar towards Catholics and Muslims as it was towards non-observant Jews. Anyway, but when it comes to getting along with one another, that there's nothing to discuss. I've often pointed out the Gemara in Gittin. If you don't believe me, because maybe you won't believe me, it's 60b, I think 68. I'm pretty sure it's 60b. The Gemara says, "Mefarnasim Israel." You have to give charity to the poor of Akum. Akum means an idolater. Of the Kochavim Umazala. The Jew is obligated to give charity to some guy who some pagan who bows down to idols. We have to bury their dead. We have to comfort their mourners, even though they're quote unquote. And the Gemara is talking about idolaters, not talking about. I'm not getting the whole discussion. Maybe today, none of these people are idolaters, right? But even idolaters, a Jew has to help them in socially. And so maybe sound a little strange, because of the ways of peace. And as if you recall, I don't know if anybody recalls, but we discussed it on Hanukkah. The Rambam ends off Hilchot Hanukkah with this beautiful idea that the entire Torah was only given to bring peace to this world. That's what Torah is all about. And we know, but by Shalom. It's a like unbelievable Rambam. He talks about lighting the candles and Shalom Bayit. What comes first, the Hanukkah candles or the Shabbos candles? Because the Shabbos candles are to bring peace in the home, so there's not darkness and fighting. The Hanukkah candles you can't use, and the Rambam says the whole purpose of the Torah is to bring peace in the world. So of course, that's Darchei Shalom. That applies to pagans and to everybody. So, anyways, okay, enough of our universalism and our other discussion. But it is an important point that we sometimes have to emphasize, and it's not always easy. Where exactly do you draw that line? Especially, I would say, inter-Jewish discussion. Especially today. Where do we draw the line between what we can accept, what we can't accept, what we can discuss, what we can compromise on? These are very difficult questions. Okay, but let's get back to the Siddur itself. Um, Okay, Mehera Leman Shemecha, but we do it for the sake of God. Because when the Jewish people suffer, God suffers, and that's one of the famous pieces. Again, Rav Soloveitchik and Kodo Dido Fake, that when the state of Israel allowed him to be a proud Jew, when the Jews were being slaughtered and massacred, where's your God? It was a desecration of God's name, and that's what the Rav writes. That's one of the ideas that Jews could stand proud, but yes, when the Jews are suffering, that's the whole Christian argument. That's what all Christianity said. They replaced us because God clearly shown by history. If anybody who's at the Parsha here, the way God speaks to man, so through history, when the Jewish people suffer, that means God is set a message. So to us, the message is to do better. To the non-Jewish world, the message was she's rejected us. It's not such a bad conclusion. And many Jews reached, I would say, the majority of Jews. I don't want to. Okay, once I'm mentioning, I was once talking to a very, I don't know why, I don't think they probably mentioning his name, but I won't. Someone in Toronto, very prominent business leader, very prominent philanthropist, who was born in a DP camp, who wrote a book about his parents, whatever, experience in the Holocaust, an Italian Renaissance. So if you know what the book, he told me that we had a whole story. He has an interesting story in the book there, but about his cousins who lead the Haredi world in many ways, really, really leaders in the Haredi world financially and whatever he put in the book when he told him, when he asked him when he was born if he wanted to know, he was born on a Friday, and he wanted to know if he was born on a Friday night or Friday afternoon. So his cousin said, "What do you care?" This when he was 50 years old. So he said, well, who cares? Who cares? Born Friday. He said, well, if I was born Friday afternoon, you could have come to the bris because the mother would have been in the hospital. Friday night, you can come to the bris. It would have been on Shabbos. He said, nobody got there. He said, Shabbos. What was Shabbos? Nobody cared about Shabbos. What are you talking about? Shabbos in a DP camp? Not one Jew was observing. Then he told me that anybody who says a Jew didn't lose his faith in the Holocaust is a liar. There's no such thing as a Jew who didn't lose their faith in the Holocaust. They're all lying. If they say they didn't lose their faith, it's impossible. He says many of them came back. He claims, he said this publicly. That's why I can feel not uncomfortable to repeat it. Otherwise I wouldn't say it. But he said his father never really gained his faith. His father lived an Orthodox lifestyle. I thought it was a nice lifestyle. I thought it was a good lifestyle. It's a way, good family values, good Jewish values. But he didn't really believe anymore. And he said that's very common. But anyways, so that's it's not unreasonable to say when Jewish people suffer, there's crisis of faith. I mean, I can talk about what's going on in Israel when when Jews had to withdraw from Gaza in the first place in 2005. There was some religious fear. People would, if you get too messianic, things don't work out. So we should tame down our expectations. We not worry about that. Worry about bringing peace to the world. Okay, Baruch Atah Hashem, Goel Yisrael. We say God is our Redeemer. Goel Chazak, strong. You have to be strong to redeem the Jewish people. Redemption shows the great when the Jewish people come back to Israel. That's the strength of God. And God is a redeemer in the present, right? Before Shemon Esrei, we say Baruch Hashem Gaal Yisrael, God who redeemed in the past, because that's all about Egypt. That's the third paragraph of the Shema, is God took us out of Egypt. That's why we say it. It sits us in Egypt. And then we say the whole bracha, Zemet V'Amuna, Mitzrayim Galtanu, Mipei Avadim Piditanu. God took us out of Egypt. He crossed the sea, Micha Mocha Beilim Hashem. That's from, of course, our Shira. So the whole third blessing is about the historical redemption. That's of the Jewish people. So that's Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. Here we're talking, even if we are talking national, but it's Goel. God is a permanent a constant and a present redeemer. So we just have to look for it. But redemption is always possible in the present. And again, especially we're talking about really on a personal level. And that really leads us to the next bracha of Rifeinu that so we'll spend the rest of the shir on. God shall heal us. I guess I don't want to say more famous. I mean, it's just this bracha is more I don't know, it speaks to people more because we relate to it. God to redeem us. We don't exactly know what that means. We need to redeem us and to save us from our enemies, so from our afflictions. Rifeinu, everybody understands that Rahman al someone is sick, you have to daven. And it's interesting. I don't know how many people ever say, I imagine most people at some point have added in, they often print it in the Siddur. Is it here? Yeah, it is here. And the RCA Siddur that I'm using right now has a little Yehi Ratzon, like right before Kiyam Malach Ranaman, you put in a Yehi Ratzon Mafanacha Hashem Elokeinu V'Eloi Avotenu V'Eloi Avotai Shetishlach Meirav Refuah Shleima Min Hashemayim Refuah HaNefesh Ruach HaGuf. God may be the will your God to heal somebody. You put it right in the middle of the bracha. Anybody ever do that for a sick person? Yeah. I imagine it's very common. Yeah. So it's very interesting. They don't print it in Barech Aleinu that we should Yehi Ratzon, that we should have a good economic year. The stock market should go up, right? And that's not a joke. I said that. I mean, unless you bought options, that it should go down. But the first time. I only heard Rav Soloveitchik speak live very few times. I came to Yeshiva University in the 1980s, and Rav Soloveitchik he was still there, but it wasn't the same Rav Soloveitchik. But I remember he gave in first hall, he gave a talk on Sefer Shmot, and he talked about Paro, and he compared Paro and the Nazis, a whole drasha. And then he talked about how we pray to God, and he said prayer is very personal. And he says if you have a chemistry test tomorrow, you should pray to do well on the chemistry test. That we don't have to pray for redemption, like it's very nice. And again, what's personal redemption? Like do well on my chemistry because maybe I can get into medical school. I mean, it's a big deal. And he discussed how personal you have to pray for that. That's what makes prayer real. You're praying for your real needs. So obviously, if somebody's sick, Rahman al we put it in Yehi Ratzon. But why don't we put that in Barech Aleinu, and why don't we put that in Atachonein? Every single bracha you can add in. So that's actually a little bit of a machloket. Some of the commentaries say no, you should not say Yehi Ratzon. You shouldn't do that. That's why we have Shomei Tefillah. Remember, the Shomei Tefillah is like a catch-all. The last bracha in the middle section is God share prayers. Then you can add whatever you want. Shema Koleinu Hashem Elokeinu Chus Rachem Aleinu. Then you can add. And some people say that's where you can add anything. The halach is if you forget, let's say in the winter, to say V'tein Talu Matar. If you don't pray for rain. So it's actually fascinating. We wouldn't think like this, but you forget those three words, you have to repeat the Shmona Esrei. That's what the halacha says, because it's so central to pray for rain. And if you forget a key phrase, so v'tein talam matarski, if you forget you don't have to repeat the Shmona Esrei. You forget, you don't say Rifeinu Hashem v'nei Rafeh. You start the bracha at Hoshienu v'nei Vashea. You don't have to repeat the whole bracha. If you forget a key, so if you forget Yalav Yafo, you then mention it's Rosh Chodesh, so the whole day is different. So you have to say it over again. So, but Mashiv HaRuach, Geshem, you have to say it over again. If you omit a key phrase, and there are not so many key phrases you have to repeat it. That's why I'm mentioning them all. These are the key phrases. So, V'tein Talu Matar is a key phrase. You have to repeat the Shmona Esrei. So, oh my God. So you remember, and you're at Semach David. So you don't have to go back. You just throw it in Shomei Tefillah. It's good enough. Shomei Tefillah is like we can put anything there. And even if you forget, you can put it there and you don't have to go back to, the beginning. So some say you shouldn't add. I don't think that's the accepted view. The accepted view is like people do, and like they print it in the Siddur. Someone is sick, you can ask God in the bracha of healing, which makes, in a sense, it makes more sense. In the particular bracha, and in Barech Aleinu, you can add that your business venture should go well, and in Atachon, and you should ask that your kid should get into medical school or law school, or you should get into medical school, whatever you want, whatever. I mean, sometimes we don't know what we pray for. It was in that same shir that Rav Soloveitchik talked about when he was in Europe. He prayed that he should never end up in America. Right? The Rav Soloveitchik comes to America in 1931. He's 28 years old. So the Rav is praying in the 1920s, America. I don't have to tell you, the one of the biggest mistakes the rabbis made of the 20th century is telling people to stay in Europe. Millions of Jews would be alive today if they hadn't made it. I'm not blaming them, but angry. It was a mistake. They didn't see. Often don't ask your rabbi historical questions. The rabbi's an expert in Talmud. The rabbi, I don't want to get into dust Torah, but there's no dust Torah when it comes to this. I remember Rav Schachter having a debate when I was in YU with some rabbi in Queens, Haredi rabbi. So basically, the Rav Schachter said, obviously the rabbis made a mistake by telling people saying, oh, well, okay. And the other rabbi was saying, no, it wasn't a mistake. I mean, I don't know. That's like insanity. What do you mean it wasn't a mistake? Say it's not their fault. You can't blame them. I didn't do any better, but they say it wasn't a mistake. But that's Torah after Rab. Anyways, okay, let's leave that alone. But so Rav Soloveitchik said he prayed he should never end up in America, because America, Tuma, there is a good reason to pray for that. And he said, thank God, God said no to his prayer. So that's, of course, the what we say in Rosh Chodesh Banking. That's the famous idea of Meshalot Libenu Litova, that God should answer our prayers only when it's good for us. No is sometimes a good answer, and sometimes no is a way better answer, even though we may not recognize it for many years, or we may never recognize it. But that no is a good answer. So I remember that Rav Soloveitchik in this same speech I'm talking about, where you should pray for your chemistry exam, he didn't say you should pray for the Green Bay Packers or the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't, that's, you have these people praying for their football team. I don't remember him saying that, but I would think, and I mean this all seriously, if you play for the Green Bay Packers, there's some guy, Dallas Cowboys, Balchuva, some lineman, I don't know, he went around speaking, I don't remember his name. He won the Super Bowl and then he became a Balchuva. He gives a motivational speaker. No, an NFL guy won the Super Bowl. That's like, people will go like Taylor Swift. They'll pay I don't know, maybe not like Taylor Swift. Okay, I can't compete, but you get the idea. So yeah, if you play for the Green Bay Packers, you can pray that you should win the Super Bowl. I don't know that Green Bay Packer fans should pay. That's already, I don't know if the Rav would go that far. I wouldn't go that far. I don't think so. Unless you play, you're the owner of the team, you're the general manager, vice. But so there's nothing wrong and everything right with praying that your stock should do well. That whatever, that's them, that's Barech Aleinu. But anyway, so that's so we can add to any bracha where we want, or in Shomei Tefillah, yet for some strange reason that I don't fully understand, that's healing, it speaks to us more. Health is so important. So I do, on that level, I do understand it. It's printed in many Siddurim. They put it right there. If you want to add in a personal prayer, of course, what's funny, once they give you a text, it's not so personal anymore. In other words, they're giving you, because that's always the problem. That's the balance with the whole, everything we say every week, the whole course, right? Many times the Siddur is really a b'diavad. We are supposed to pray from the heart. It means it's spontaneous and subjective and changes all the time. Oseh tfilato keva. The Mishnah says, one who makes their prayers permanent, ein tfilato tachnunim, his prayers will not be merciful. What do you mean permanent? So you say the same thing every single day. That's tefillah keva. We have no choice. It's not really right. We have no choice. We discussed this many times because people wouldn't know what to do, wouldn't know how to pray. So the rabbis forced us, but that's why the Shemona Esrei is silent. So you can add in your own personal prayers. We don't want you to just say the words. Saying the words is the mechanics of prayer. That's not the mitzvah of prayer. The mitzvah of prayer is in the heart, right? That's what we've been talking about, the importance of the heart, and that should be personal. So you can say it in any language if somebody's sick. But of course, we put it in for you because people don't know what to say. But you could put this in any bracha, say it in Shomei Tefillah. But that's interesting. I think Rafeinu speaks to people. Health is, without health, you don't have anything. So anyway, so that's the we add in a minute. But let's go through the bracha at the beginning. Okay, let's throw out Rafeinu Hashem v'nei Rafeh Hosheinu v'nei Vashea. Heal us, O Lord, and we shall be healed. Save us, and we shall be saved. So this really, even though it says River Rivenu, this is really the only place, I think, in the Shemona Esrei where we say something twice. Heal us, God, heal us, or we will be healed. Why do we say it twice? Why don't we just say Rafenu? We say Slach Lanu Avinu. We don't say Slach Lanu V'nislach. We don't say Barech Aleinu V'nivarech. Tekabah Shofar Lecherutenu V'neyach. Like, why only here do we say God heal us?
Rabbi, refuat nefesh, refuat
guf. So very good. So are you asking or making a state or stating?
Stating.
Right. So Rifenu, so some say Rifenu Shem and they are right. We're praying for mental health, what we would call today mental health, what the Gemara calls Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf. What we know today is mental illness, which probably is in many ways greater than physical illness. There's been I don't know that mental it's so much worse today. I mean maybe it is worse, but it's more recognized. We understand the issues. We can identify them much more than we could even a generation ago. I don't know. I imagine it's no different in the United States, but I know I mean, I teach in Chad, of course, as you all know, and we often, in staff meetings, they often bring in people to talk about, the pressure kids are under and dealing with mental health issues. It's a big Chad. It's a tremendous guidance department, tremendous. Really, really, they work with all kinds of specialists to deal with, kids that get assessed in school, for whatever deal with issues, and it's Baruch Hashem, it's great. But at least they say 1 in 5 Canadians has mental health issues. That's a lot of people, 20%. It's like whatever, and then maybe it's more. So some say. Okay, so you want to say it's referring to both. Refrain and they refer. One is physical of one. That could be. I don't know the commentaries exactly say it that way, but for sure. What the H. Yosef in the Otzer Hatfilot Siddur, that's one of the classic Siddurim I like to quote. So he says something very interesting. We discussed this in Hashivenu, when the bracha that we should do tshuva. And we don't say Hashivenu Hashem v'nashuva, which is what we say in Eicha, where the pasuk is based on Hashivenu Hashem elecha v'nashuva. Right, that's right. Eicha, the last pasuk in Eicha, we say when we put back the Sefer Torah, God returned to us, and help us when we return to you. And we discussed that because God can't do tshuva for us. It's only up to us. Everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of God. So we say God should lift out his hand, and then God should give us the impetus, and then we can take over. We need a push. It's so hard. So we ask God, of course, you can't do tshuva for us, but you can help us. You can do that first step. So that's so Hashivenu Hashem v'nashuva. But it's interesting, we don't say that in the Siddur. Only by Rifenu. Here we just say Hashivenu v'inu l'Toratecha, return us to your Torah. But he quotes, the H. Yosef quotes that pasuk, and he says, Rafeinu Hashem, and therefore we say to God, we can't heal ourselves. You have to do the first healing, we'll take over. And that's, so he applies it to mental illness, or he calls refuat hanefesh, that people, right, that's the biggest problem. People, like, you're an alcoholic, you need someone to help you. You have to help yourself, but you need, you got to go Alcoholics Anonymous. I know 12 steps. I don't know. Thank God I've never been drunk in my life, so I don't know what from these things. But I'm not Yotze on Purim. At Chatai Ani Maskir Hayom, I generally don't even have a reveat of liquor. I drink wine on Purim, a reveat of wine, but okay. Anyways, so he says God should help us, and then the person can hopefully have the strength to help themselves. And that's true in physical illness too. In other words, you want to take better care of yourself. You need a coach to help you exercise. So they get you started, then you have to do it. So that's how he explains. Rafeinu Hashem, God should sort of do the first step, but it's really up to us. It's I think it's a very modern idea, that this idea that we are responsible for our own health. We need help. But that's true I would say, on lifestyle choices, and maybe true in mental illness. When somebody is mamish sick, Rahman al-Islam, obviously you can't really interpret it quite like that. But I think it does have a lot of powerful meaning, and that's how he explains it. That we're asking God to help us a little, and then we can do the help. And of course, when we're asking God to help, means we're asking doctors. I mean, that's really right. Don't ask God. I mean, God has his messengers in the world. That's what I remember Rabbi Tendler once saying. Rabbi Tendler wasn't a medical doctor, but a PhD in biology. I mean, he wrote one of the experts on medical ethics. Rav Moshe Feinstein's son-in-law. I don't know how many people ever met Rabbi Tendler, but a Rebbe in YU, and the head of the biology department in YU, Rabbi in Monsey, he just passed away, but within the last couple of years, he had a Riches Yamim. And so anyways, I remember him saying, we're not a doctor, we're a rofe. A Jew shouldn't just be a doctor; he should be a rofe. It's a rofe nema. He's ani Hashem rofecha. I'm the Lord who heals you, and the doctor is the shaliach. So Raveno Hashem and Rafa means there's a relationship, one monitoring between a doctor and a patient. That the doctor, they give you, if you don't take your medication, if you don't do your exercise, you don't do your I don't have to finish the sentence. We all understand that. So that's what that's what I think what it means. That's what we should be thinking about every day when we say this Rafeinu Hashem v'nei Rafeh. The other thing, what I think is pointing out, and is the idea that I just said the doctors are the shaliach of God, but it's only God who heals, right? Sometimes the shlichut works, and sometimes it doesn't work, right? Why does somebody recover from cancer and somebody doesn't recover, and they have the same, doctors haven't figured that out yet. Maybe they'll figure out something in the cell, but we all understand that really only God is the healer. And that's what I said, Ani Hashem Rafecha, that's after the Shirat Hayam, that only God, if you do my mitzvot, I won't do anything I gave to Egypt, because I'm the Lord who heals you, and only Hashem is our true healer. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about that, because I think it's an important subject. So it's very funny. Where's the obligation to become a doctor? There are two professions in Judaism, I think, that are mitzvot, that are inherently mitzvot. Healthcare doctors, but I'd say the healthcare field and teaching. There's no mitzvah to be in the grocery business. There's nothing wrong with being in the grocery business. I didn't realize there was a whole article in the Globe and Mail yesterday on Costco. I didn't realize it got started in Alaska, where it was very hard to get food, so they brought a warehouse. So it was very convenient to go shopping. But I didn't realize the founder of Costco was a Lithuanian Jew. I think I forget the name now, but beautiful. Jews are always in the retail business, in the shmata business, in the diamond business. Nothing wrong. There's no mitzvah to sell diamonds, even to get engaged. I don't know, whatever. They found some big diamond yesterday in Botswana or something, the biggest diamond in the 100 years. Anybody see that in the news? I don't know, 2,000 carats or something. A big picture in the news. The president of Botswana holding this diamond. Okay. Anyway, there's no inherent mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to make a living. Yeah, that's one of the 6 things a parent has to teach child. So obviously that's fine. But and I guess I guess on a certain level it's a mitzvah, especially in the capitalistic world, because what makes your business successful, you provide a need to society. So yes, there's a mitzvah, but I'm talking inherently in the work you do. So that's only obviously in the medical field and in teaching Torah, which is why I know this is I don't know how to apply this in real world, that doctors and rabbi and teachers are supposed to make the same salary, because neither of them are allowed to take money for their work, because it's a mitzvah. In other words, when you work in business, I can charge whatever I want within, halacha sometimes has guidelines in necessities. You can't, but in the luxury field, I sell art. So whatever I want, there's no ripoff. By the way, that's true in a house too. Theoretically, it's true in a house too. How much is a house worth? What somebody's willing to pay for it. That's what a house is worth. There's no value to a house. It's what people are willing to pay. I don't know if it's 100% true anymore, but we know that's true for art, maybe for Taylor Swift tickets. I don't know what your daughter paid for them. I don't know. They're worth whatever people will pay for them, right? So there's no ona that we do have. There's no price fraud in these things. On food, on necessity, that there are price fraud. Not even price fraud. You're not allowed to make more than 1/6 of a profit, rent, etc. But doctors and teachers are not allowed to make any money, because they're doing an inherent mitzvah. So whatever the heter is to pay them, but whatever heter to pay them is the same. So doctors and teachers should make the same money. I'd be very happy if they instituted such a policy, but it ain't happening anytime soon. Okay. Anyways, that's fine. No complaints. Fine. But where is the mitzvah to be a doctor? There's
Yerape.
Yeah. Okay. So where does that come up? Where does that come from?
With Miriam when she got saras.
Oh, that's a pretty good guess. You should have quit while you're ahead. Okay, let's go here.
No, the mach of the plague.
No, everybody's while they're ahead. Parsha Mishpatim. You get into a fight.
Right.
Forget these nice things.
This is the.
I'm sorry.
Mishpatim.
Yeah, it's the rough and tumble of the world. People get into a fight. The Torah is realistic. It's a real book. He punches him in the face. Be'even, or he takes a stone. He didn't have guns back then. Obek rough with a fist. But he didn't kill him. But he's in the hospital. He's lying. He has to, has to recover. If he gets better, so you don't have to kill the assailant. If he dies, the assailant gets, in theory, a death penalty. But he got better. But Rakshiv Toyite Virapo Yirape. But okay, he's not going to kill him, but he spent 3 weeks in bed. He didn't work. And he's a pitcher in the New York Yankees. I don't know, making, how much is Ohani making? What, they're $70 million a year. So a guy misses a month, that's $10 million. So you owe him $10 million. It's not exactly like that. We won't get into how they calculate it, but in theory. So you have to give Shifto the fact that he's not working. You have to pay for his employment and Rapoyi Rapay. And you have to heal him. So the Gemara, so from here, you have to pay his medical bills. And the Gemara says, I have a friend who's a doctor. He won't charge you. Getting back to, so the guy can say, he won't charge me. A doctor who charges nothing is worth nothing. Right? You get what you pay for. You want a good doctor, you got to pay for it. Okay. So v'rapoy. So that's the mitzvah to be a healer. But the Gemara has it in such a strange language. It's like so strange. I'm still, I know what the Gemara is saying, and then come back. I still, to this day, I just find this so strange. V'rapoy, it's like a mitzvah to become a doctor. And notice the double healing, right? Hashev tashiv. I have that by lost object. And the Gemara always interprets, you have to return a lost object 4 or 5 times. It means you have to heal and heal again. You can't say, okay, I treated him last week. Okay, you treated him last week. It's not working. Give him new medication, right? Rapoy Rapay is stressing, like the Torah often does. Azov tazov, naton titang, give, right? Often the Torah wants to stress the importance of a mitzvah. It repeats the word a second time. So here you have that by medicine. So I think it's pretty important. The Gemara in Bava Kama has such a strange idea. The Gemara, without getting in, the Gemara is discussing what's it in Bava Kama, because Bava Kama discusses the 5 things. When you punch somebody in the face, the Gemara there only lists, the Torah only lists 2, Shevet and Ripui. But there's Nezek, Tsar, and Bosha. We're not going to have a shear in Bava Kama but I have to pay for the Nezek, the actual damage I caused. The Tsar is the amount of money he would pay. Like I said this, how much money are you willing to pay me? Well, there's a debate which way you go. How much money are you willing to pay me that I shouldn't break your arm? Or how much money are you willing to take and I'll break your arm? Like if I give you $10,000, would you let me break your arm? Probably not for $10,000, but for $100 million, yes, I'll wear a cast for 6 weeks. No, for $1 million, I'll do it. So that's where I say, I'm willing to pay you $100,000 so you don't break my arm, whatever it is. So that's Tsar, that's the pain. Nezek is the actual damage. You break he's a penis and you break his fingers, he can't play piano anymore. So that's Nezek of damage, and that's connected. And then there's Shevet, right, unemployment, kind of insurance, and Boshet, the embarrassment. You slap somebody in the face in the street, it's very embarrassing. If you slap the Queen of England, it's doubly embarrassing. The Gemara says, depends who does the embarrassing and who you embarrass. When the president of the United States says something to you embarrass, that's very embarrassing. If some guy who you don't care about says something, it's not as embarrassing. Anyways, that's why it's in Bava Kama. Bava Kama is hachovel bechavero. If you punch your friend, you assault your friend, you got to pay all these payments. So the Gemara is going through them. That's what it's doing in Bava Kama. So Gemara says, the Vei Rabbi Shmuel, to the Tanya Vei Rishal. The Tanya, we learned Rabbi Shmuel, that's Rabbi Akiva, is basically his Chavruta, contemporary. Omer v'rapo yirapeh. The Torah says, and you should surely heal him, right? Heal him. Mikan shenitan reshut. Mikan shenitan reshut. L'rafeh. From here, you have permission for the doctor to heal. Meaning, without this verse, apparently, the simple meaning just of this Gemara, without this verse, it would be prohibited to heal. This is astounding. This is astounding. Why would it be prohibited to? But that's what the Gemara says. I didn't make that up. You saw that. Why do we need permission to heal? So this is the classic religious argument you hear. What permission to heal? Of course, you need permission to heal. If God makes you sick, God heals you. What right do you have to interfere in God's world? So the Gemara is telling us that we shouldn't say that. We shouldn't say that. But that we have a havamina to say that's what I find amazing, because it's so against how we are trained, because we reject this. It is totally true that we do intervene, and we don't care what God says, and we try to heal, and don't give me this stuff. It's a divine punishment. We just heal the person what we do. But at one, there is a idea that one could have said, we reject this idea, but one could have said it's prohibited to heal, and therefore the Torah gives reshut. Once the Torah gives reshut, permission, it becomes obligatory. So here I'll show you the Rambam. I think it's the Ibn Ezra who says it here. No, it's Ibn Ezra we were before. Where were we here? So if you look at the Ibn Ezra, this is amazing. Is it here? Okay, I'll do it in Hebrew because maybe they mistranslated. I mean, so it's really true. We gave permission. So the Ibn Ezra says something like in Ripley's Believe It or Not. The Ibn Ezra says, when this verse applies, that's you punch somebody in the face. When there's human, I'm sick because what humans did. But if you have internal disease, choli shehu bifnim, that's an internal disease, nothing you did, although that probably isn't true either. We know today that internal disease, but I don't care. I'm not interested in the medical facts. I'm interested in the theological statement the Ibn Ezra says, which is astounding, which was totally rejected. That the permission granted to the doctor is only for external injuries, but not for internal injuries. No, okay, the Ibn Ezra had a lot of strange views. You'll tell me he did. I mean, he was very important, but he had a lot of views that are a little bit out there. But if you want to see somebody more mainstream, let me find it here. The Ramban. This is in the Tochacha and Bechukotai. And the Ramban says, here, we'll do it in Hebrew too, or maybe we'll do it here in English if I can find it. It's a long Ramban, as you see. And the Ramban says like this. Here, let me find it. After consulting the physicians. Okay. Here it says, it's righteous ones. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Imperfect accord. Okay. Okay. God blesses their bread and their water, removes sickness from their midst, right? That's what we say. We say that if we follow God, we won't be sick, right? That's the blessing of God. We will not need a physician, and we won't have to observe any of the laws of medicine. Okay. So the Ramban says what the Torah is saying, it's not like you shouldn't go to a doctor, is if we keep the mitzvah Torah, we won't need a doctor. Whatever that means, okay? Just he said, for I am the eternal, because Ani Hashem Rofech, quotes the verse, because I'm God who heals you. And so did the righteous ones act at the time when prophecy existed. And Tzaddikim can rely on this. That's what the Ramban says. When he doesn't say today, he says in the time when prophecy existed, there was a special closer relation. That was the shir last night, that God had a much communicated with man very closely, and then he withdrew, and God became more distant already in the period of Nevi'im. Already from the end of Dvarim is the sea, and then it goes down. But anyway, so even mishap or inquiry causing them sickness, they did not turn to the physicians, but only to the prophets. That was the case with Chizkiyahu. Actually mentioned last night, Chizkiyahu went to Yeshayahu when he was sick. So this is an amazing view of the Ramban. It's not just that at Tzaddik, there's a certain notion that at Tzaddik doesn't need a doctor. When you can, again, without getting into politics, you begin to understand. People say, well, if I learn Torah, we don't need an army. This is the same rooted in this Ramban. Now, the Ramban I don't think the Ramban is saying we can apply that. And for sure, Jewish law says we're not allowed to apply that and all these things. But there is a certain idea here that's maybe a little foreign to us because it has no practical applicability. I would say it's hubris. It's arrogant for anybody to say we can rely on it. The halakha totally rejects it. I should have put it up maybe for next week. I don't want to start looking now, but how the Rambam talks. The Rambam, like how the Rambam and the Rambam, of course, was a doctor, as was the Ramban. Many of our medieval sages were doctors, so they talked about the unbelievable importance of medicine, and we totally reject these ideas. But I think think whatever. Until I think it's I don't know. People should be aware that our tradition is a very pluralistic. I don't know what the word is, multifaceted, and we have all kinds of views and everything, but you can already see it's based on the Gemara. The Gemara has this sort of strange language. Mikan shenitan reshut. The doctor has permission to heal. Like, okay, if you want to heal, but you don't want to heal. So in practice, that permission is an obligation, an absolute 100% obligation. But you have strands within our tradition that sort of emphasize that on the Ibn Ezra is sort of wild, that only applies for certain types of illnesses. I don't know what what he would say today, that we know internal diseases are caused by how our lifestyle choices, most of them. And but anyways, and the Ramban, who sort of says there's this theoretical construct, at least in the time when they're prophets, that righteous people can have. It's like Rav Arn Lichtenstein says, when the Rambam writes, that's kol ba'ei olam. Whenever the Rambam uses the expression kol ba'ei olam, it means Jews and non-Jews. So the Rambam, this is the Rambam on the one hand says, if you take money for learning Torah, you lose your share in the world to come. So the Rambam writes. Rambam writes, you're not allowed to pay teachers. That's why he became a doctor, although it's treating non-Jews, a different story. But the Rambam is, as I'm sure many people know, was adamant against more than anybody else. And we don't accept the view of the Rambam. Okay, we can't live like that. The Rambam says you're not allowed to take money for teaching Torah. But again, I think there is something to that. A guy who's a lawyer making $500,000 a year, and they ask him to give a shiur on Shabbos afternoon, he shouldn't ask for money. Like, I think there is something. Said Torah should be taught for free in theory, but on the other hand, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, as Rabbi Riskin said. We have an obligation today to pay as well as doctors, right? Because we need skar batala, we need to pay. So there's this balance, but so we should be aware of the strands in our tradition. Of course, in practice, we have to pay, but there is this notion, and that's already is a real notion. Not to reject that. Torah in theory is free. It's only because for practical reasons it cannot work. Just like in theory, the Torah is only oral. You're not allowed to write down the Torah. We're going to tell people, no daf yomi, can't learn daf yomi, can't learn anything, got to only learn bapez. That's ridiculous. So that there are certain things that theoretically exist, but have zero practical application. Here, by medicine, it doesn't even, it exists theoretically, but we reject it. It's not that we reject the notion that Torah should be oral. It's not practical. It's Eik lasot l'Shem hefer Torah techa. We had a read, they quoted the verse, it's a time to annul the Torah. In other words, Torah really should be oral, but it can't work. It's not we say, really, you shouldn't go to a doctor. That's not true. No. It's different. Really, you should go to a doctor, but there is a trend to think that maybe certain people at certain times didn't have to go. But anyways, even if that would exist on some theoretical framework, for anybody to think they're like that, that's a little bit insane. So the Rambam, as I started to say, somebody who takes money for learning in Kollel loses share in the world to come. That's what the Rambam writes. What can I tell you? And it's a chilul Hashem. You're desecrating God's name. You're making Torah into materialism and economics and negotiating salaries to do God's work. Oh, come on, give me a break. But okay, on the other hand, the Rambam writes in Hilchot, I think it's in Shemitah V'Yovel, the Rambam writes, anybody who wants to be part of Shevet Levi, Kol Ba'ei Olam, which means non-Jews too, he wants to dedicate his entire life to God, just like the Levim were supported by the rest of the Jewish people. It seems like it's a contradiction. It's not exactly a contradiction. They can become a permanent member of Shevet Levi. Shevet Levi were the religious teachers of the Jewish people. They didn't sit in Kollel. They taught Torah. So when you're a teacher, how do you make a living? So you had to pay Shevet Levi so they could teach, So anybody can join Shevet Levi, the Rambam writes. But the Rambam has this thing. I remember Rav Arn Lichtenstein wrote this, anybody look in the mirror. And anybody who's ever read a newspaper, anybody who knows who Taylor Swift is automatically out. The Rambam writes you have to be so only holding by the world of Torah. Such a person who, like Ben Azai. Ben Azai said, I can't get married because I can't change diapers at 2:00 in the morning. So we don't have, and the Rambam writes, Rav Soloveitchik developed this, that somebody who says he's like Ben Azai, ein biyado avon. He's not sinning. The Rambam doesn't think it's a good idea. But if somebody really, if somebody mamish is like Ben Azai, he can't, I don't know, they said Rav Yashiv didn't know the names of his own children. That's what they say. They only have that in the Hebrew version. Mark Shapiro pointed out in English they would never print that because they know even in the most right-wing circles in Lakewood, people will think that's insane. But in Israel, it's not so insane. So in the Hebrew version of the book, there's a story he didn't know his daughter's name, whatever. Okay, so but he still got married and had a bunch of kids. So if a person who's like Ben Azai, so in theory, because he teaches Torah, so he's sort of like having children. So you have to be on that level. But anyways, there is such a concept in theory on some level that only God, I mean, that maybe you shouldn't use a doctor. All this is really where it's trying to stress that ultimately God is our healer. 99.9%, I would say today, 100% of the times, 100%, maybe 110% of the time, everybody must go to a doctor, and the doctor is the shaliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But I think Refeinu Hashem and Erfa is basically telling us that on a theological level, only God heals us. And why sometimes the doctor works and sometimes the doctor doesn't work, that's Refeinu Hashem and Erfa. So sometimes he stretches out his hand. God should start the healing process, but it's a two-way street. Medicine is the doctor and the patient. This is so modern. Like today, we all understand this. But I don't think 100 years ago people understood this. Today, we totally understand that health is the patient has a much greater role than the doctor does in doing our health. And then talk mental health and physical health. I think it's a very beautiful idea. And I'll just end with a cute story. I figure, okay, God heal us and we'll be healed, save us. Yeshua, right? So I just want to, even though it's probably not the exact meaning here, but the redemption, healing and saving, right? When a person is sick, like, he doesn't care about being saved. You need to be healthy to appreciate redemption. I'm going to use the term of redemption, and I'll tell by a beautiful story that I heard from Mark Dratch, Rabbi Mark Dratch, who for many years ran the RCA, made Aliyah last year, and of course he was a rabbi in Toronto, which is how I've known because he was in YU. He was the head dorm counselor the first year. He got engaged to Rabbi Garlap's daughter the first year I was in YU. That's anyway. So he married Rabbi Garlap's daughter, who was the dean of REITs, and then a number of years later became rabbi of Sher Shemaim here in Toronto. We mentioned the shul last night, and so
Jay, Rabbi Lam's daughter, not Rabbi.
I'm sorry.
Rabbi Lam's daughter, not Rabbi Chalap.
I'm sorry. Yaakov Neuberger married Rabbi Chalap's daughter. Thank you for that correction. Oh boy, I'm going to get into trouble. We have to rewind on the tape. That's right. He married Rabbi Lam's daughter. That's correct. Yeah. That was a bad mistake. Okay. I mean, they're both nice people. When Rabbi Chalap, his daughter married Yaakov Neuberger, who was from Toronto. So there's the Toronto connections on both of them. Yaakov Neuberger, of course, is a Rebbe in YU, the rabbi in Beth Abraham in Teaneck or Bergenfield, I guess, technically. Anyway, so Rabbi Dratch became Toronto. I started a Tisha B'Av, many of you were at our Tisha B'Av program a couple weeks ago. I started the Tisha B'Av program live, 1989 in Toronto, where we did it, nobody heard of Zoom, nobody heard of anything. We did it in Clanton Park, and we had, so Rabbi Dratch spoke. He had just arrived in Toronto like 3 weeks earlier, or so. So he told the story about Rav Kook. I believe he said Rav Kook said this story when he spoke at the inauguration of Hebrew University in 1925. That's also a big thing, right? Hebrew University started, Rav Kook, the chief rabbi. So the story was something along the lines that he was, a young girl, had her favorite doll, and she got sick. She was sick for a long time, never played with the doll. She was sick. And one day she woke up and she said to her parents, going to have my doll back. And the parents knew that the daughter was much better. If she's worried about her doll, that's a very good sign. And of course, Rav Kook said that for 2,000 people, 1,900 years, the Jewish people were sick. We were in exile. And we couldn't worry about our dolls. We couldn't worry about. So he was quoting the Gemara, "Miyom shachar v'peit hamikdash ein lekadosh baruch hu ela daled amot shel halacha." That the Gemara says from the time the temple was destroyed, God only has the 4 cubits of Jewish law. In other words, nothing else, man. Just learn Gemara and Halacha, and don't give me this philosophy garbage and blah blah blah. Miyom shachar beit hamikdash ein lekadosh baruch hu l'dalach ha'mashalacha. Rabbi Judge pointed out it's obvious. That's a bad thing. It's a lament. Miyom shachar beit hamikdash, from the time that's not a good thing. From the time Tem was destroyed, we lost so much of Judaism. Okay, we just have to worry how to live our life, practice. But we can't worry about bigger pictures, ideas. But when the Jewish people come back to the land, we're healthy. We're going to wake up. We're going to want to study philosophy. We need a Hebrew university. Okay, we need to study, archaeology and history and science, and we're going to be the leaders. Because as we read last week, probably my favorite verse in the Torah. Moshe says, Shmartem vasitem, you should keep the Torah, because it's your wisdom among the nations. This Jewish people are so smart. It's an amazing verse. We don't pay attention. We keep the Torah to impress upon the world how smart we are, how beautiful. What a beautiful Torah. And it's moral excellence, but it's also scientific excellence. The Gemara on Shabbat 75a says from this verse, there's an obligation for Jews to study science. So what the Gemara says, because we have to be the nation of the world have to be blown away by our wisdom. It's such an important verse. But for 2,000 years we were persecuted, pogroms, have a Holocaust. We can't worry about being a light to the nations, and the nation can be smart. But now we've come back to our land. It's a beautiful idea. So that's what Rabbi Drach spoke about. This is 1989. And this is this is not 1989. This is 1991. I remember exactly. This was the summer of 1991 when Rabbi Drach gave that beautiful idea. So I just want to tell the story because when we're better, then we can talk about redemption. When we're sick, we just worry about getting better. When we're sick, we don't play with dolls and we don't worry about Taylor Swift or whatever, the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm sorry to pick on you. I just can't, that comment. Okay. But so anyways, but that's it. That really is a beautiful. So healing, without healing, you don't have anything. And that's why the next bracha, we're not even finished on this, but we'll talk about wealth. Baruch Aleinu, blessing, because who cares before you have that? But anyways, so just let's review quickly. I see time is running out. Time ran out. So we discussed a little bit Geula, they finish off the bracha of redemption. It's personal redemption. We talked about the link between personal and national redemption. Doing tshuva, redemption does depend on tshuva. We have to believe in tshuva. What I forgot to mention is some say we're asking God to fight our battles for us, our personal battles, to help us. We've suffered too much, more than we have to. So some say, I forgot to mention this, that it's talking internally. That's talking about our Yetzer Hara. We're asking God. I explained the whole thing about external, God to help us against our enemy. That's probably the more the plainer pshat, the more basic meaning. But some also point out the meaning is internal. We're fighting with our Yetzer Hara, so we ask God to help us to have desire to do mitzvot, and that's expressed in a famous halacha in the Rambam. That every Jew, this is a very, very Kiruv concept. Everybody knows this. Everybody's taught this as a kid. Every Jew deep down wants to do what's right. I don't know if that's 100% true, but we have such an idea that, we just have to get that flame going. That's what they say we're praying for. And that's the Rambam puts that lahalacha, because the Rambam says if a man refuses to give a divorce, a get to his wife, you can beat him up. I won't talk about today. That's for another shir. Maybe we should probably use this Rambam, but you can't do it in America. You can beat up the man if he's obligated to give a divorce. You want to beat him up. So how long do you beat him up until? And when they stop beating him up? How many lashes? 39 lashes, like in Torah. 39. How many lashes? Until he gives a get, and if he doesn't give a get, he'll die. You kill him. And then his wife doesn't need a get, right? Very good. Thank you, Susan. So, and what I mean, because the explanation is every Jew, but you have to give a get of your own free will. You can't be forced to give a get. He wants to give a get. It's just like the external pressures, the narishkeit, and his lawyers convince him and this and that, and he's mad. But deep down you want to do it. It's a beautiful idea, really beautiful. It's expressed halachically. That's the Rav's idea. Every philosophy, every philosophical construct has to have a halachic application. We don't believe in philosophy as philosophy. Philosophy has to be intertwined with halakha. But it is a beautiful idea. The halacha expresses this idea. So that's what some say we were asking God to help us overcome all the narishkeit that prevents us from doing mitzvot. But anyways, okay, we talked Mehira. Is the Gula going to come slowly, quickly, whatever? And then we got in, of course, the bracha of healing, why it's the double language and mental illness, physical illness. God is our redeemer. God is our healer. And even this idea that we have strands in our tradition that and there's a certain ideal, at least for the most righteous people, not to use a doctor, but it's an ideal that even if it ever had practical applications, and the Rambam, many disagree with that at all. It's not true at all. But even if it did, it has, of course, it's not a realistic. It has no practical applications today. But it is anyways. But God ultimately God decides, and the Hashem Rofecha, and God, and with being a doctor is a great mitzvah. There's no greater mitzvah. Being a doctor really is a tremendous thing, and that's the reason so many great rabbis in the Middle Ages became doctors. It really is doctors and teaching. There are no greater things. The physical health of the Jewish people and the spiritual health of the Jewish people. And today, doctors are involved. I want to call them the spiritual health too, mental health, and of course, healthcare is not just medical doctors. We've brought in the mental health professionals, and thank God the Jewish community is much more aware of these problems than they were even 20 years ago. And there's still some resistance in some circles, but Baruch Hashem, we're doing much better than we were. But there are a lot of problems. Lots of people have mental health issues, all kinds of problems. So we should hope that everybody should have a refuah shlema. But we'll pick up on this, please God, next week. Refuah shlema, and that's what we should all be blessed with. And then we can worry about we can worry about our dolls. It's a beautiful thing when you can worry. I don't worry about my dolls, but maybe my baseball glove that I don't know where my baseball glove. I haven't used it for a long time, but that's what I would have woken up. I said, "Where's my baseball glove?" And or my hockey stick, But anyways, okay. Let's see. No, any questions with OD in Hell by Rabbi Dr. Berkowitz? Okay, I assume OD is overdose. I assume I'm not.
No, I'm sorry. Just read the next. I
with
missed
God in Hell by Rabbi Dr. Berkowitz. I don't know who that is. For you,
Eliezer Berkowitz.
Oh, Eliezer,
Talmud,
of course,
the Talmud of the Sridei Age.
Yeah,
right.
of course. I'm just reading his book, Kocha Shel Halacha. I'm actually in the middle of reading it as we speak. I mean, not this second, but
yeah,
of course. But I don't know about that. He wrote a lot of books.
Yeah, it's a very. I didn't know either. But
after the Holocaust, he wrote. I'm not this
so
book.
This is like the sequel to that, which I never heard of. I got some obscure copy from the library, and it's really something because he analyzes theologically and philosophically how the spiritual resistance of some Jews, not many, but the Jews who did stand up to the Nazis and put on the tefillin every day and risk their lives. It's an amazing
right. Okay, right. Because I was talking about it.
Because you mentioned that. So yes.
Right, I was talking about every Jew that this brings home. Every Jew lost their faith. Yes, there were Jews who had the faith. Yeah, so I don't actually accept what he said that it's 100%. He said there's no such thing as a Jew who didn't lose on some level. Many got him back. I don't. I would say it's 95% true, but and I think it really is true. Many more people lost their faith than we think, and for totally understandable reasons. God forbid any of us should criticize them. God forbid we should. But Eliezer Berkowitz, in many ways, I think he's had a little bit of a forgotten figure. For he was great. He was the top student. The reason we have this 3-day Aish is only because of Dr. Berkowitz, Eliezer Berkowitz, Rabbi. He was his top student, and the lost were lost in the Holocaust and writing. And it was Eliezer Berkowitz who went around collecting all the tshuva that happened. He put together the 3-day Aish, the remnants of the fire. That was just parts of the writing of Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, even though he survived the war. But to write again, it doesn't work that way. And he was the Talmud, although I love how he writes in this. Do I have it right here? Well, let me just see if I have it somewhere right here, if I can find it in 1 second. But I can't. No, not in heaven. Okay. I don't see where it is. But in his book, Not in Heaven, he writes at the end, I've quoted before, I think a beautiful idea. He says, I'm going to say things, I'm a faithful student to my Rebbe, but of course I was taught, you have to do what you think is right. And in the last paragraph said, I'm going to write things in this book that I know the Sridei Aish would not agree with, that he would not accept my halachic interpretation, but, this is what I have to do. And it's it's very beautiful, and that's the classical way of learning. I mean, Rav Moshe Feinstein doesn't use that exact same language, but he says similar idea, Rav Moshe Feinstein. But anyways, I think he taught for many years in Skokie, the head of the philosophy department, and then he made Aliyah. I don't know exactly when. Anyways, what's his name has put out a lot of his writings. Hazoni has put out the essential writings of Eliezer Berkowitz. So they have a lot of his stuff. Okay. When being intentional when we pray and when we participate in any ritual. Yeah, I guess saying, we shouldn't do it by rote. I was saying, you say Yehi Ratzon. Right. We should add our prayers as comes from the heart. Right. That's Tov Ma'at im kavana me harbe b'li kavana. It's good to pray a little less with more intent and focused and a little more. This is a big problem we have because I've mentioned many, many times, especially in our schools, we're much too concerned with being orthodox. So we can't skip because that's what the conservative and reform movement does. And it is really a tragedy that so much, it is for sure true that had there not be a reform movement, we would be much more willing to skip and to do innovate. The problem is every time we do something, we can't do that because the conservative movement will be accused of conservative Jews. That really is a true thing. I think it's very tragic, but that's the reality of life. So we're very concerned. So we don't allow kids we make kids mumble the whole davening. So, and how much time do you have? It takes a long time to say it. So they end up saying it quickly instead of splitting up Sukkot Zimra or all davening to 5 pieces, just daven 1/5 of the davening. Or you say Shema every day. I get it. Okay, Shema may be the part of Shemona Esrei out loud, whatever, especially below Bar Mitzvah, but everything else split into 5, say 1 out of 5 days. Spend 5 times as much saying, say it out loud, sing it, explain it, be much more meaningful, but that's too radical for people. Anyways, okay. All right, any other questions? Otherwise, thank you very much, and wish everybody Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Debbie, you can say something.
I was thinking that we say at the beginning of davening, "Shamash Natata B'Torahi," right?
Right.
And that I was reminded of when you said, what Susie said, that you hit the person until he agrees. That we're saying that our essence is good, and sometimes it gets muddied or sullied, but at the heart, you're a good person.
Although I don't know that's really true because it says in the Torah, Ki Yetzer Lev Adam Rav Minu Rav. But okay, this is a complicated area, right? I don't think it's true that man is basically good. Man is not basically good. That's just not true. And you see it. So when your baby cries at 2:00 in the morning, we understand why a baby cries, and we're not upset at the baby. But that's not good. That's it's a silly example, but man is not inherently good. Man, we have to work on being good. We're not inherently good. I don't know that we're necessarily, I think we all know that the power for evil is much greater than the power for love. We've discussed it by Freud, right? I love that shot. I heard it from Ravar Soloveitchik, quoting Freud, that the reason Shlomo Melech knew who the real mother was not because the real mother wouldn't let her kid be killed. It's because the fake mother would let the kid be killed. It's such a powerful insight. And that's the Rav explains that why we say that a Baal Tshuva is on a higher level than a Tzaddik Amor, because when you sin, and then the Rav explains, the power for sin is much greater. We're much more interested in sinning. We'll do much more efforts to sin than we will to do a mitzvah. So if we can transfer that power from a sin that we used to sin and become a Baal Tshuva, and now with mitzvah, wow, you're going to do mitzvahs on a much higher level. And we see that every day. Bali Tshuva in many ways, I can't generalize, but they have a more intensity than often people, FF, whatever, terms you want to use, because I get it. So it's not really true that we're inherently good. Nevertheless, the halacha is, I want to get into Aristotle here, ought, should be, we ought to be good. And therefore the halacha says a Jew ought to always want to do mitzvot. And therefore the Rambam says you can beat him up. You can beat him up because deep down he wants to. I don't even know that that's a contradiction, that our power for evil is greater. Is still.
So what do you do with that first tefillah?
No, it's true. The nefesh was split in his Torah, and we sully it. I mean, we have the potential for good. I mean, I think like a lot of things, aren't you? There's sort of a tension, and we're very open with that tension. And yes, on the one level, man is great, right? On one hand, we're B'Tselem Elohim, and on the Havel, and we say them back to back. That's the Rav says that's slichus and davening. the fact that we can daven before a king, a chutzpah, we've said this many times, the Ramban, it's an act of kindness. The fact that we can stand before God and pray is the greatness of man. Amazing. What's slichus? Slichus is the lowliness of man. That's how Rav Soloveitchik explains. We're coming up to Slicha. This Friday, we're going to start in a week to say Slichus. We're going to do an experimental class. This Marty Lush is going to give a series on Slichus for 3 weeks. I told them I don't know how many people are going to come. Slichus, I think people are not so interested. We were joking around, but we'll see. I gave a shiur for 2 years in my shul for 15 minutes every night before Slichus. The average attendance was like 2.3 people, and I said, "Because no, who cares? Slicha, get out of here, Slichas." We have to do it to Slichas what we do at Kinot. At we say only one of the, like we do slichas, say
and
one
focus.
and explain it, but that's not how slichas works. It's a different mentality. But the Rav explains the idea of slichas is the lowliness of man. Man's a nobody. So it's so beautiful. We say slichas, and there's a minhag that the person who says slichas should daven shachrit. I think there's something beautiful. That same person who says I'm a nobody, and should be the person I'm a king. I'm the Call Yisrael b'nei malachim heim. All Jew. Both are true. We know that. It's just which one are we going to be more like? That's the beauty of Judaism. Man is full of contradictions. Life is full of contradictions. I'm sorry?
You should have two takim.
Correct.
Right.
The world is for me, so correct. So I don't think there's any contradiction. We're a bunch of low-life sinners who just want to get pleasure and don't care and they're willing to do anything. And we're godly, amazing people, because both are true. And our life's mission is to get us more to the side of doing good than to the side of doing bad. But and that's why environment is so important. Because we're influenced by so many factors beyond our control. Anyways, okay. Thank you for coming and for listening to my thing. And I maybe you'll get if you know what, even if you got me tickets to Taylor Swift, I wouldn't go. I have like zero interest, But I wouldn't even go to I would in theory, but not if you gave me tickets to the Blue Jay game this year, forget it. I don't want to waste my day. There's just like, get me tickets to the 7th game of the Stanley Cup final, then I'll go. Okay. Anyways, all right. What can I tell you? Okay. All right, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Be well. See you, please.
Shabbat
God.
Shalom.
Have a big 11:15 on Sunday. And okay. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.